Welcome everyone to Dr. John Bedker's Leadership Podcast, the podcast focused on leadership. The episode will begin shortly. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the podcast.
Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Dr. John Bedker Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, John Bedker. Well, today is a significant day. Perhaps not one that we're all keenly aware of or thinking about in the United States, but it's an important day, and that is the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. And today we're going to talk about that from a leadership point of view. The role of leaders, each and every one of us, now in this 60-year anniversary. Let me begin by talking about one of the founders, Thomas Jefferson. A quote to begin. "In our system, the first and most vital of all our rights is the right to vote." Jefferson described it as, quote, "the ark of our safety. It is from the exercise of this right that all of our other rights follow." So from the beginning, the importance, the significance of each of our rights, and I would argue responsibility to vote, is a key, fundamental leadership task. Well, it is the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, as I mentioned. I'm going to read from a piece given by President Lyndon Baines Johnson on what he calls the voting rights and the American promise. This was delivered on March 15th, 1965. He addressed a joint session of Congress to push for passage of the Voting Rights Act. It's an important beginning because today we face this dilemma head on in the state of Texas. And I'm going to talk about that after reading what Lyndon Baines Johnson said in this joint session. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, members of the Congress, I speak tonight for the dignity of man and the destiny of democracy. So folks, from the very beginning, he's talking about us, we, this collective leadership that we all need to bear, we all need to stand up for, because it, in fact, as he says, affects the destiny of our democracy. Back to his piece. At times, history and fate meet at a single time in a single place to shape a turning point in man's unending search for freedom. So it was at Lexington and Concord. So it was a century ago at Appomattox. So it was last week in Selma, Alabama. Remember, he delivered these remarks back in 1965. There, long-suffering men and women peacefully protested the denial of their rights as Americans. Many were brutally assaulted. One good man, a man of God, was killed. So he's laying out the very fundamental, one of those foundational items of democracy, the right of people to peacefully protest, to say, no, I think this is wrong. I don't think this is the right thing. And unfortunately, in this case, he talks about one good man, a man of God, who was killed for exercising his democratic right. Okay. There is no cause for pride in what has happened in Selma. There is no cause for self-satisfaction in the long denial of equal rights of millions of Americans. But there is cause for hope and for faith in our democracy, in what is happening here tonight. So I like that. I like that hope idea. I think for leaders, for each and every one of us, providing hope is always important. And Lyndon Johnson did that. For the cries of pain and the hymns and protests of oppressed people have summoned into convocation all the majesty of this great government, the government of the greatest nation on earth. Our mission is at once the oldest and the most basic of this country: to right wrong, to do justice, and to serve man. I think that's huge. Think about that from that leadership point of view. Servant leadership, to serve man. In our time, we have come to live with moments of great crisis. Our lives have been marked with debate about great issues of war and peace, issues of prosperity and depression. But rarely in any time does an issue lay bare the secret heart of America itself. Rarely are we met with a challenge, not to our growth or abundance, our welfare or our security, but rather to the values and the purposes and the meaning of our beloved nation. Think about that again, the leadership. Think about the values and the purpose and the meaning of our beloved nation. This absolutely is a call to action and a call to leadership, which really says we need to do the right thing. He continues, the issue of equal rights for American Negroes is such an issue that was certainly a huge issue at the time, particularly related to Selma, but across our nation. And should we defeat every enemy, should we double our wealth, conquer the stars, and still be unequal to this issue, then we will have failed as a people and a nation. So he sets the bar out. You know what it is. We need to not meet that bar. We need to exceed that bar. This was the first nation in the history of the world to be founded with a purpose. The great phrases of that purpose still sound in every American heart, North and South. Quote, all men are created equal. Government by consent of the governed. Give me liberty or give me death. Well, those are not just clever words, and those are not just empty theories. In their name, Americans have fought and died for 2 centuries. And tonight, the world they stand there as guardians of our liberty, risking their lives. Those words are a promise to every citizen that he shall share in the dignity of man. This dignity cannot be found in a man's possessions. It cannot be found in his power or in his position. It really rests on his right to be treated as a man equal in opportunity to all others. It says that he shall share in freedom. He shall choose his leaders, educate his children, and provide for his family according to his ability and his merits as a human being. Remember this, written and delivered back in 1965, but he's talking already about the central issue today, the capacity to choose your leaders. To apply any other test Johnson says, to deny a man his hopes because of his color or race, his religion, or place of birth is not only to do injustice, it is to deny America and to dishonor the dead who gave their lives for American freedom. To those who seek to avoid action by their national government in their own communities, who want to and who seek to maintain purely local control over their elections, the answer is simple. Open your polling places to all your people. Allow men and women to register and vote, whatever the color of their skin, and extend the rights of citizenship to every citizen of this land. So, Johnson then concludes by saying, so I ask you to join me in working long hours, nights and weekends if necessary, to pass this bill. And I don't make that request lightly. From the window where I sit with the problems of our country, I recognize that outside this chamber is the outraged conscience of a nation, the grave concern of many nations, and the harsh judgment of history on our acts. But even if we pass this bill, the battle will not be over. And certainly, folks, that's what we're here today to talk about. The battle isn't over. It's being refought today in Texas, but frankly around our country. What happened in Selma is part of a far larger movement which reaches into every section and state of America. It is the effort of American Negroes to secure for themselves the full blessings of American life. Their cause must be our cause too, because it's not just Negroes, but really it is all of us who must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry and injustice. And we shall overcome. Well, the speech continues for just a bit more. He talks about his beginnings and how he has been so personally and humanly affected. That was 60 years ago, and today is the anniversary of passage of that Voting Rights Act. And as I said, the struggle continues. So where are we? Well, says the Texas Lieutenant Governor, quote, we're a red state. We deserve more representation. Now think about the words of LBJ. Is that what he said? That we need to selectively pick who should be in charge, and they should be in charge, which is to say others' voice and vote should be subordinated, and we will find a way to do that, what is often referred to as gerrymandering, which is to say to draw the lines, the outlines of a congressional voting district to determine who their representatives will be, that they do that in such a way to subordinate the voice and vote of a particular group, in this case, Democrats. Obviously, in days of old, it was people of color. Today, it's a party. And so this Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, has defended these what's called redistricting efforts, saying the Republicans, quote, deserve more seats in Congress. Because, again, the Lone Star State, Texas, is a red state. He goes on Hannity, that's a Fox News large show, stating that Democrats should really be brought to task. They potentially should be arrested, criminally, civilly, I should say, civilly prosecuted for fleeing the state in a bid to block passage of this new congressional map that the Republicans would like. Because that map would give Republicans potentially 5 pickup opportunities in the House during the 2026 midterms. What he's done is he's accused the Democrats of losing touch with their voters. That's a quote. Well, is that really what's going on, or is it the capacity, the desire of a party, in this case the Republican Party, to circumvent through redefining congressional districts so that they could subordinate the vote of Democrats to ensure that as many as 5 seats, those people's votes would be unable to prevail so that their voice could be heard in the Congress of the United States. So, is it possible that this could work? And the reality is likely not. Likely not, right? Because eventually, these Democratic legislators in Texas will need to return, and they will. Governor Abbott may likely call another special session and likely can prevail. A quorum is needed, which is to say 2/3. There are 150 legislators in the Texas state legislature, so you need 100 people present for the quorum to pass legislation. In this case, redistricting of congressional districts. Well, there are 88 Republicans in the state legislature, so they're short of that 100. But nonetheless, it does seem likely in the end that the Democrats cannot just terminally be gone. In fact, the governor thinks that he might make a legal challenge that these people have vacated, quoting, vacated their office and therefore should be replaced. And of course, they would hope that would be with Republicans. Well, what happens with where they've gone and what's going on? Well, one of the areas they've gone is Illinois, where the governor there, J.B. Pritzker, this is sort of the other side, if you will, has vowed to protect the Texas Democrats who fled the state over the GOP redistricting efforts, and has accused President Trump of trying to, quote, steal congressional seats from the people. Now, keep in mind what LBJ said back in '65. No right is more important. It is an act of leadership by each and every one of us to vote, to have our voice, and to have it be heard. But if this gerrymandering, this drawing of the lines, can be so manipulated to deny people's voice and vote, then the Voting Rights Act has not prevailed. In fact, it may likely have been violated. Now, this will be tested in court. But when we think about leadership and doing the right thing, you understand why the Democrats in the legislature in Texas took the action that they did. I remember years ago, starting at the Naval Academy, given this book called Reef Points. It had a number of sayings. You had to memorize them and be able to talk about them, repeat them back to an upperclassman. One of those reef points I think is particularly important here today on this 60th anniversary, and that is this: be deaf to expediency where principle is involved. Well, I think Lyndon Baines Johnson made it very, very clear what the principle was, that we should all be created equal, that we should each have a voice, and that our vote should count. It should be heard. not to gerrymander in a way that would subordinate their voice and their vote. Now, typically what happens is congressional districts are redone every 10 years after a census. Seems reasonable, seems logical. It has been what is called the norm. It is not, however, the law. And so these Republicans seeking to do the wrong thing have used this, it's not illegal, let's do it. And President Trump has encouraged him because of his fear about the outcome of the 2026 midterm elections. And so they'll use means and methods to try to get around doing the right thing. Well, folks, I think that is exactly what we need to speak about in terms of leadership today. We need to listen to the words of Lyndon Baines Johnson. We need to take to heart this critical leadership activity, voting. We need to make sure that those voices and votes are heard and mean something. And so I think what happened back in 65 was hugely important. But what's happening today brings it into specific focus of why we need to stand up, to speak out, and try our level best to do the right thing. Currently, more than 50 Texas Democratic lawmakers from Texas have scattered to several Democratic states in an effort to block the Republican challenge, this gerrymandering of the map. This map is designed specifically, intentionally, purposefully, give Republicans potentially 5 more opportunities, something President Trump has pushed for. Trump said on CNBC this week on a show called Squawk Box that Republicans are, quote, entitled to the 5 seats. Now, folks, this gets to the very heart of our country, we the people. What are we about? What do we believe in? What is our values proposition that makes us a free, fair, and open democracy? Well, it is not this, folks, and that's why this message of leadership is so important today. Stand up, speak up, and make known that doing the right thing, having every vote count, and not subordinating people's votes for your own personal agenda is neither democratic nor American. And it most certainly, from a leadership point of view, is not the right thing. So let's celebrate the right to vote. Let's celebrate the Voting Rights Act. Let's ensure that everything is done to make that happen. As Reef Point says, be deaf to expediency where principle is involved. Okay, thanks, folks. Hope you're all doing well. We'll talk soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Dr. John Bedker's Leadership Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please tell your friends, and, of course, please follow our podcast and subscribe. Thank you again for tuning in.